Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is your host Ben on the Lover of Tech channel, and what I have here for you is another camera comparison, and this time it's between the Galaxy Note 9 versus the S9 Plus. And what we're going to be doing is testing the photo capabilities between both these phones. And what I'm going to do is run you through the main camera specifications for the rear and also the front facing camera. Now on paper, both these smartphones are using identical smartphone hardware in terms of the camera for the selfie and the main camera. Both are using a dual 12 megapixel camera with the main camera lens that has an f1.5 aperture with the new dual mechanical aperture that changes from f1.5 to f2.4, 1.4 micron pixel size, optical image stabilization, a ×2 telephoto zoom lens with an f2.4 aperture, 1.0 micron pixel size, and optical image stabilization. And also when you're looking at the selfie camera, you do have an 8 megapixel selfie camera with an f1.7 aperture, 1.22 micron pixel size with autofocus. Now the main difference on the Galaxy Note 9 is also the new software optimization with Scene Optimizer, which allows you to see different scene detection with AI on the smartphone, as well as flaw detection and all the new image signal processor for photos when taking it. And we are going to see, away from the hardware, all the software implementations with flaw detection as well as Scene Optimizer, how much of a difference does it make? So everything has been left in its automatic default mode. So let's start with the low light photo test. Now taking a look at this first low light selfie of myself, and you can see that it's very apparent that the color temperature difference is very different between the two. The S9 Plus on the left is way too warm. It's almost like I've been set on fire. It's red, it's practically red, whereas it's much more toned down on the Galaxy Note 9. I still don't think it's exactly as I would like, but it's definitely a lot better on the Note 9. And it's something that I was really doubting, so I actually took another shot, and as you can see with the second shot, it is exactly the same characteristics. In terms of sharpness and detail, it's fair enough the same, the field of view is the same, but wow, the color temperature is way too warm. It's practically red and it's completely blown off. I definitely like what I'm seeing on the Galaxy Note 9, clear winner here. But when switching over to using the selfie flash, they are practically identical in terms of the light and exposure, the field of view, the sharpness, the color rendition. There is a bit more noise reduction being reduced on there, so in terms of sharpness, it's not as sharp as I would like it, but they are exactly the same when the flashlight is illuminated for the selfie. I couldn't really tell the difference between the two, but let me know what you think in the comment section below if there's a difference to what you're seeing in this picture here. Now this next low light selfie of the cabinet, you can see that the Galaxy Note 9 on the right actually has a slightly warmer color temperature, whereas on the left with the Galaxy S9 Plus, slightly more neutral. Both in terms of sharpness and details are fair enough the same, but the color temperature is ever so slightly warm on the Galaxy Note 9 on this particular shot. Then next, using a flashlight to illuminate the cabinet, both are pretty much exactly the same in terms of brightness, exposure, and sharpness in detail. I have said it before, the flashlight exposure on the Samsung Galaxy flagship phones are a bit too harsh, even though they do come out very bright, but in most situations I just find them to be way too harsh and way too sharp. But they are both identical in this particular situation. Now this next shot of the Europe car sign, on the right the Galaxy Note 9 wins it, and here is why. It has better dynamic range in terms of being able to expose the yellow underneath sign of the Europe car sign, also the lights underneath the Europe car sign as well, although slightly warmer, but much better exposure without being overexposed compared to what you're seeing on the Galaxy S9 Plus on the left, which is also struggling to expose the yellow underneath the Europcar sign as well as the white and the green as well. So definitely, and also an ever so slightly cleaner image. This might also be down to the Scene Optimizer picking up the night mode and exposing correctly, but the Galaxy Note 9 is doing a better job here. And both in their ×2 optical zoom mode, the S9 Plus on the left has been able to recover the yellow and also has better dynamic range with the Europcar sign, but they look exactly identical to me. I might probably say that in terms of the color temperature, slightly more neutral on the Galaxy Note 9 to the right, but really pixel peeping and looking at the image, they pretty much are exactly identical in this particular situation. This next image of the Europcar sign, you can tell on the Galaxy Note 9 on the bottom left further to the image, it's slightly warmer, but actually they are still very much identical. Not much difference here. The f1.5 aperture being used well on both, clean image, great noise reduction, but a slightly warmer color temperature to both images nearer to the left of the image, but pretty much identical. Let me know what you think of the two. Now both these cameras in their respective ×2 zoom mode, it's funny that I'm seeing a slightly cleaner image on the S9 Plus, but you do get better color representation of the yellow underneath the Europcar sign on the Galaxy Note 9, but you really have to look at it. Slightly better color rendition on the Note 9, but a slightly cleaner image on the S9 Plus. I'm not too sure why that is, but that's what I'm seeing to the image. But let me know what you think out of the two. Next picture of this bush plant, you can pretty much see that there's slightly better green separation on the Galaxy S9 Plus on the left to the rest of the bottom of the plant compared to what you're seeing on the Galaxy Note 9. Again, I'm not too sure why that is, but the color representation does look better separated on the S9 Plus, but in terms of sharpness, low light performance, and the overall image, they're very identical apart from the color separation and the color representation, which I slightly lean more to on the S9 Plus that I prefer. But again, let me know what you think, whether I'm right or wrong, and which one you like out of the two in this particular shot. And then using a flashlight, you can see again the sharpness, the brightness, the exposure is exactly the same, but the green representation between the separation of both is slightly different, ever so slightly muted and neutral on the S9 Plus, where it's a bit more vibrant on the Galaxy Note 9. But that's what I'm seeing. But apart from that, everything else is pretty much identical with the flash illumination on this plant. This low light shot of myself with the main camera, both are really in a tough situation for low light. They're doing the best they can using the f1.5 aperture. You can see a slightly cleaner image on the Galaxy Note 9, but it is also a warmer image as well. But apart from the sharpness and the representation of what you're seeing, very similar. The only reason I would probably give this to the Galaxy Note 9, if you take a look higher at the sky, you can see separation between the night sky to the background and also to the foreground, whereas the Galaxy S9 Plus is really struggling to do that, and that's a very difficult thing to pull off at nighttime. So I would most likely give it ever so slightly to the Note 9, although I would say that the color temperature is slightly represented better on the S9 Plus, but equally not as I would like. And the last low light photo of myself using a flashlight, you can tell that both these are way too sharp and overexposed. Slightly better results in terms of the highlights and the exposure on the Galaxy Note 9, but still the same struggle, still with the red eye issue that produces such an exposure. And again, this is something that they really need to fix with the harsh flash, but pretty much performing the same, slightly better on the Galaxy Note 9. Now switching over to the daylight, here's the shot of this statue and pretty much identical, slightly darker image in the shadows to what's on the right to the Galaxy Note 9 compared to the S9 Plus, and a slight representation of the trees and the greens are ever so slightly different. But apart from that, very much identical. I couldn't tell much of a difference between the two, so let me know which one you think. Now both in their respective ×2 zoom mode, again same characteristics as before, a slightly darker image within the shadows and the blacks. If you see it between the rocks, you can tell on the Galaxy Note 9 on the right, whereas a slightly brighter image within the blacks and also the shadows of the image that you can tell within the shadows, and it's just ever so slightly different. So let me know which one you prefer. You do get a slightly sharper image in representation because of that on the Galaxy Note 9, but a brighter image on the S9 Plus. Next is a daylight selfie of myself, and between these two images, they are pretty much identical in terms of sharpness, field of view, color rendition of the skin tones, maybe ever so slightly richer on the Galaxy Note 9, but pretty much identical. I couldn't really tell much of a difference, and I spent a long time looking at this and pixel peeping, so let me know if you can, but I couldn't between myself. They look pretty much identical to me. And here's another selfie in vertical orientation. Again, same characteristics as before, couldn't really tell much of a difference in terms of field of view, sharpness, color rendition to the skin tones. So again, take some time, pause it, have a look and see if you can tell a difference. And here are both these cameras' respective portrait mode background blur known as selfie focus. And again, it's there, they work decently well, and I've stated it before, they are nowhere near on the level as how good and sharp the dynamic range and the details is on something like a Pixel 2. But they're there as an option if you want to use it. It does work decent enough. They pretty much look identical. Again, slightly richer skin tones on the Galaxy Note 9 maybe, but everything else in terms of sharpness, field of view and background blurability are near enough the same. So let me know what you think. This next landscape shot, again, not much difference in terms of field of view, sharpness and detail, but I might probably say that the grass is ever so slightly darker to the right on the Galaxy Note 9, but again, it's such a minute difference. It's really hard to tell the difference unless you really take time to look, but at a glance, very similar in both. So again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And here is a shot of this red dustbin, and we're starting to see a consistent characteristic between both the similarities of these cameras. The reds, the sharpness, the details, the field of view are pretty much well represented, exactly the same. So again, I spent a long time looking at this, but I couldn't really tell a difference between the two. And when you switch over to the ×2 zoom mode, again, very similar in terms of representation of the colors, the field of view, the sharpness and the detail from what you're seeing on the telephoto zoom lens. So again, let me know what you think of this pattern that you're seeing so far. Now this half body shot of myself, it might have been down to the changing light conditions with how clouds were moving with the sun that day, but if we're just taking at face value with this image, the Note 9 is doing a slightly better job with the highlight roll off on around my face and my head compared to what you're seeing on the Galaxy S9 Plus on the left. So it does look like a slightly darker image, but in terms of the exposure and the skin tones as well as the highlights, it seems to be doing an ever so slightly better job on the Galaxy Note 9. But again, let me know what you think when you see these two images. And following on from before, this full body shot of myself, you can pretty much tell that the characteristics are pretty much the same as before. Slightly better highlight roll off handle on the Note 9 compared to what you've seen on the S9 Plus, but everything else in terms of field of view, sharpness, detail and color rendition is ever so slightly similar, apart from the highlights and also a slightly darker image on the Galaxy Note 9 because of it. But let me know what you think. Next is portrait mode, aka live focus, on both the Galaxy Note 9 versus the S9 Plus. The bokeh looks much more aggressive on the Note 9. When you look at the top, it looks much more aggressive. It is meant to be working with HDR, but again, they look very much identical in terms of the bokeh roll off as well as the background blur and also the separation to the foreground and the background, but you do get slightly different color rendition to the skin tones of the Galaxy Note 9, which is a bit more accurate and more pleasing compared to what you see in the S9 Plus. But again, let me know what you think. This is what you have in terms of the representation of live focus. This next shot of the flower is where I saw the scene optimizer feature on the Galaxy Note 9 really kicking in and changing how the look of the flower is. Now, if you can see between the two, you do have a slightly better color progression between what you see from the end petals to the inner petals on the flower, as well as better shadow representation of the flower on the Galaxy Note 9 compared to what you see on the Galaxy S9 Plus, which is kind of very same in terms of how you see all the colors. There isn't a separation between the color gradients between the two, from the outer petals to the inner petals as well as the shadows. So here's where the scene optimizer actually surprised me in how well it was working. The same characteristics again with this yellow flower. The Galaxy Note 9 has done a much better job being able to separate the color progression gradients from the outer petal to the inner petals, as well as the inner shadows where you can see the individual breakups, as well as also the background where you see the greens of the leaves much better as well, and a much more color neutral image. Vibrant but color neutral, where you do kind of see like a white haze on the S9 Plus. The scene optimizer seems to be really working here. This is where the different separation is when it detects a different object that it's optimized for. And as the sun popped out slightly, this was a chance to see how the dynamic range will be working on both these cameras, and they're both doing a great job. But to me personally, I actually feel to the left that the S9 Plus is doing a slightly better job with the shadows and the foreground separation, and also the highlights of the harsh sun coming down. But let me know what you think. I do think that the S9 Plus is doing a slightly better job here. And raising the camera slightly higher to the sun, both these phones have been able to expose the sun correctly, so it's not too harsh and not too blinding. But again, I do feel that the S9 Plus, for whatever reason, is doing a slightly better job in terms of the dynamic range and managing the highlights as well as the harsh sun and the shadows of the foreground. But again, let me know what you think. Both are doing well, but I do have to say that the S9 Plus is doing slightly better in this situation. And the shot of me crouching in direct sunlight, exhibiting the previous characteristics as before, slightly better highlights roll off handling on the Galaxy Note 9 with better skin tone representation as well, resulting in an ever so slightly darker image but better exposed, and also better handling of the highlights, where you do see the highlights around my face on the S9 Plus to be a bit too bright compared to what you see on the Note 9. So I do prefer what I'm seeing on the Note 9 here. And with my sunglasses on, same characteristics as before in terms of the skin tones, the highlights and the exposure of the image, much more favored on the Galaxy Note 9. Now with the camera directly at the sun with me in front of it, I have to say that the S9 Plus is doing a slightly better job. Now both are doing great being able to handle it, and you can see that there's been a big improvement in dynamic range compared to the Note 8 as well as the S8 Plus. Between these two, for whatever reason, you can see that the S9 Plus on the left has better exposure to my face, but both are doing a great job. But I do give this one ever so slightly to the S9 Plus. Now that about wraps it up with the ultimate camera comparison with the photos between both these two, and I wanted to give you my conclusion to what I saw between these phones when I was testing out the photos. The color temperature difference with the low light selfie between these two, it's very apparent. It's practically night and day, and it's something that looks to have really been fixed to what was on the S9 Plus, which is just way too red and way too warm for my liking. Much better. I still would like better color temperature performance on the Galaxy Note 9, but it's a night and day difference from what was seen on the Galaxy S9 Plus. When the automatic mode scene optimizer is not really being utilized, there is a lot of similarities between both these cameras, with slight differences in color rendition and also highlight roll-off handling, but everything else comes very close. But when scene optimizer really kicks in, as we saw with the flowers, you can really see where it's doing a good job, not just in terms of color representation and color roll-off and progression gradients, but also how it handles blacks and shadows, which is really interesting. So there will probably be more testing I'll do with this, but it seems like in the right conditions, when it's working, scene optimizer is really handling blacks and shadows and also color gradient progression well between subjects. And that's about it for me. This has been a very interesting in-house camera comparison on the photo side of these things. If you haven't already, check out the video camera comparison, which I will link in the end cards as well. Let me know what you think, and let me know which one is your favorite photo camera out of these two. And follow me on social media. Hit me up in the comment section below. Let's have a discussion. Follow me on Twitter and also on Instagram, and make sure that you do hit that subscribe button and also hit that notification bell so you're part of Team TLS, the Tech Lover Squad, so you do not miss any new content on the Galaxy Note 9 and any further in the future. I'm your host Ben on the Lover of Tech channel, and you will see me next time.